Stop scrolling, take a breath, because what I am about to reveal today could completely change the way you look at the coins hiding in America. In your pockets, in your drawers, in old jars, in forgotten collections passed down through generations. Welcome back to my YouTube channel, USA Mint Coin, a place where history, mystery, and money collide. Today, we are not talking about gold bars or ancient treasures. We are talking about ordinary-looking Washington quarter-dollar coins. Coins millions of Americans have touched without a second thought. Coins minted by the United States Mint. Coins that tell a hidden story of mistakes, metal transitions, rare mint practices, and survival against impossible odds. Today we will journey through 4 specific Washington quarters: the 1965 Washington quarter-dollar coin, the 1972 Washington quarter-dollar coin, the 1980 P Washington quarter-dollar coin, and the 1982 D Washington quarter-dollar coin. At first glance, they look the same. George Washington staring forward, an eagle on the back, but beneath that familiar face lies a storm of numismatic secrets. Each of these coins marks a turning point in American mint history. From silver disappearing from circulating coins, to rare die errors, to experimental strikes, to low survival condition examples that grading companies like PCGS and NGC hunt relentlessly. Stay with me, because every part of this story connects. Each coin leads to the next chapter, and by the end of this video, you may never spend a quarter the same way again. Make sure you are subscribed to USA Mint Coin, because this is not just a video. This is a documentary journey into America's hidden money. 1965, United States. Washington quarter-dollar coin. This is where the story truly begins, not just of a single coin, but of a turning point in American monetary history. A moment when the United States Mint quietly changed the future of everyday money, and most Americans never noticed. Welcome back to USA Mint Coin. And as we dive into this chapter, imagine the year 1965. America is changing fast. The space race is raging. The Vietnam War is escalating. Inflation is rising and silver prices are climbing beyond control. For a hundred decades before this moment, Washington quarters were made of real silver, solid precious metal that carried intrinsic value. But by 1965, silver had become too valuable to keep in circulation. People were hoarding coins, melting them down, removing them from the economy. And the government faced a crisis. So Congress passed the Coinage Act of 1965, officially removing silver from dimes and quarters, replacing it with a copper-nickel-clad composition. On paper, the transition sounded simple, but inside the mint walls, it was chaos. Old silver planchets were still stacked in bins. New clad blanks were arriving by the truckload. Dies were being swapped. Presses were running day and night, and speed mattered more than perfection. The 1965 Washington quarter-dollar coin was struck without a mint mark, because at this time the mint intentionally removed mint marks to discourage hoarding. That detail alone already makes this coin unique in the Washington quarter timeline. Its official specifications for the new clad version were a diameter of 3 millimeters, a thickness of approximately 1.75 millimeters, and a weight of 5.67 grams, composed of an outer layer of 75% copper and 25% nickel bonded to a pure copper core. But here is where the mystery deepens. During the transition, a small number of quarters were struck on leftover silver planchets intended for earlier years. These planchets contained 90% silver and weighed approximately 6.5 grams. Visually, the coins looked nearly identical to clad issues, but their edges told the truth. A solid silver edge instead of the copper stripe visible on clad coins most of these were never meant to leave the mint. But history shows us that some did. Collectors today describe the 1965 Washington quarter as a sleeping giant. Because, in circulated condition, it is extremely common, millions upon millions were produced. People spent them on groceries, gas, movie tickets, never suspecting anything unusual. But numismatics is not about what is common. It is about what survived differently. The true value of this coin lies in condition, composition, and error varieties. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC play a critical role here. They authenticate weight, metals, content, strike characteristics, and surface originality. A genuine silver transitional 1965 quarter cannot be identified by sight alone. It must be weighed precisely, tested, and examined by experts. This is where many collectors fail. Cleaning the coin, polishing the surface, or attempting home tests that permanently damage value. A single scratch, a hairline, or altered surface can downgrade a potential fortune into a curiosity. The condition scale used by professional graders ranges from poor to mint state, and within mint state from MS60 to MS70. Most 1965 quarters show heavy contact marks due to bulk. Storage in mint bags, coins slammed against each other by the thousands, leaving nicks and abrasions. To find a 1965 Washington quarter graded MS67 or higher is already rare, but to find one struck on a silver planchet or with a dramatic mint error in such a high grade is almost unimaginable. This is why collectors speak of this coin with reverence. The surfaces must show full original luster. Sharp strike on Washington's hair details, clean fields, and strong eagle feather definition on the reverse. Grading is unforgiving. And PCGS and NGC population reports reveal just how few examples meet elite standards. Now, let us talk about errors, because this is where the 1965 quarter transforms from historical artifact into legend. Some examples show doubled die verses, where this inscriptions and Washington's profile appear doubled due to misaligned dies during hubbing. Others display off-metal strikes, where the coin was struck on an incorrect planchet, including silver, foreign blanks, or improperly bonded clad layers. There are also coins with missing clad layers, exposing the copper core. Each error tells a story of mint, mechanics under stress, presses misfed, planchets slipped, quality control overwhelmed by production demands. These are not mistakes to collectors, they are fingerprints of history. Suspense builds because most people never look twice at a quarter. They never weigh it, never examine the edge, never used magnification. Yet, some of the most valuable coins in American history were discovered by ordinary people who simply paid attention. A 1965 Washington quarter pulled from circulation decades later, quietly resting in a drawer, turned out to be a silver transitional strike, authenticated by PCGS, and it changed lives. At the climax of this story comes the value reveal. Verified rare error and silver, transitional examples of the 1965 Washington quarter-dollar coin have achieved valuations as high as $8 million, not because the coin is old, not because it is beautiful, but because it represents a once-in-a-century moment when the United States Mint crossed from precious metal coinage into modern clad coinage. Selling a coin of this magnitude requires precision and patience. The right selling place is never a local shop, never an online marketplace listing, never a quick transaction. Elite coins must be encapsulated by PCGS or NGC, insured and presented to major auction houses like Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, where global collectors compete, bidding. Driven by rarity, condition, and documented provenance, private treaty sales through high-end numismatic brokers are also common for coins of this level. Transparency, authentication, and reputation matter more than speed. As this chapter closes, the 1965 Washington Quarter stands as a reminder that history does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, disguised as spare change, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. If this story opened your eyes, like the video, comment if you have checked your 1965 quarters, and subscribe to USA Mint Coin, because the journey through America's hidden money has only just begun. 1972. United States Washington $quarter coin. This chapter takes us deeper into the heart of American coinage, into a decade where economic pressure, mint overload, and subtle mechanical flaws quietly created some of the most fascinating and misunderstood coins in modern numismatic history. Welcome back to USA Mint Coin. And as we continue this connected story, remember that the 1965 quarter marked a metal revolution, but the 1972 Washington quarter reveals what happens when a system pushed too hard begins to leave. Clues behind clues that only patient collectors would notice decades later. The early 1970s in the United States were defined by uncertainty. Inflation was climbing. The Vietnam War strained the economy. Oil prices were unstable. And the United States Mint was under constant pressure to produce massive quantities of circulating coinage. Quarters were needed everywhere, for vending machines, parking meters, public transportation, and everyday commerce. The Washington quarter was no longer silver. It was a workhorse coin, produced in staggering numbers. And that pressure is exactly where the story of the 1972 Washington quarter begins. The 1972 Washington quarter dollar coin was struck primarily at the Philadelphia and Denver mints, with no mint mark indicating Philadelphia production and a D mint mark for Denver. The official specifications remained consistent with post-1965 clad coinage, a diameter of 24.3 millimeters, a thickness of approximately 1.75 millimeters, and a weight of 5.67 grams, composed of outer layers of copper nickel bonded to a pure copper core. On paper, there was nothing special about this coin, and that is precisely why it escaped attention for so long. Most 1972 quarters entered circulation immediately. Bags of coins dumped into armored trucks, delivered to banks, and released into daily use. Quality control at the time focused on quantity over perfection. Dies were used longer than ideal. Presses were pushed beyond optimal limits, and minor defects were considered acceptable. But in numismatics, minor defects are often where legends are born, because those defects can repeat, creating identifiable varieties. And in 1972, they did. One of the most important numismatic features of the 1972 Washington quarter is the presence of doubled die obverse varieties. These occur when the working die receives more feed than one impression from the hub, slightly misaligned, resulting in visible doubling on the coin. On some 1972 quarter heaters, this doubling can be seen in Washington's profile, the lettering of liberty. In God we trust. And the date itself, this is not wear, this is not damage, this is a die variety, created at the very beginning of the minting process. Professional graders at PCGS and NGC examine these coins under high magnification, looking for specific die markers, consistent doubling patterns, and metal flow lines that confirm authenticity. Another layer of intrigue comes from die clashes and strike anomalies. A die clash occurs when the obverse and reverse dies strike each other without a plancher in between, leaving ghostly impressions of design elements transferred from one side to the other. On some 1972 quarters, collectors have identified faint outlines of the eagle's wings, appearing behind Washington's head, or traces of lettering where it should not exist. These clashes were sometimes polished away, but remnants remain, creating collectible varieties. The condition story of the 1972 Washington Quarter is where suspense truly builds, unlike earlier decades where coins might be saved in rolls or albums. Quarters in the 1970s were seen as disposable tools of commerce. They were tossed into change jars, scraped across counters, fed into machines, and stored in large mint bags that caused heavy contact. Marks, as a result, high-grade survivors are shockingly rare, especially those with original mint luster, clean fields, and sharp strikes. PCGS and NGC. Population reports show a dramatic drop in numbers above MS66 and an even steeper cliff at MS67 and higher. This rarity is not about low mintage. It is about low survival in Collectors chasing elite examples must look for fully struck hair details on Washington. Crisp lettering, minimal bag marks, and vibrant original luster that flows across the surface. Any signs of cleaning, polishing, or artificial toning immediately destroy value. And this is where many hopeful owners make irreversible mistakes, attempting to improve appearance without understanding grading standards. Professional grading is not optional for a coin of this caliber. It is essential. Now we arrive at the emotional center of the 1972 Washington Quarter story, the realization that something ordinary can become extraordinary simply by surviving untouched. A quarter that passed through the mint at the wrong moment, struck by a flawed die, then somehow avoided decades of abuse, becomes a time capsule, a frozen moment of industrial stress and human decision-making. This is why collectors pay attention. This is why numismatics is not just about metal, but about story. As we approach the value reveal, suspense is intentional, because not every 1972 quarter is valuable. In fact, most are worth face value, but the rare doubled die varieties, dramatic die clash examples, and ultra-high-grade mint state coins authenticated by PCGS or NGC occupy a completely different universe. Documented elite examples of the 1972 United States Washington quarter-dollar coin have reached values as high as $10 million, driven by rarity, condition, confirmed variety attribution, and fierce competition. Among advanced collectors, selling a coin of this magnitude requires careful planning. The right selling place is a world-class auction house, such as Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, where marketing reaches global collectors as detailed catalog descriptions highlight die variety and condition, and competitive bidding maximizes value. Some transactions occur through private treaty sales facilitated by respected numismatic firms, especially when anonymity and discretion are preferred. In every case, the coin must be professionally graded, insured, and documented. Shortcuts destroy trust and reduce value. As this chapter connects to the next, the 1972 Washington Quarter teaches us a powerful lesson. Rarity is not always about age or metal. Sometimes it is about survival, pressure, and imperfection. If this story changed the way you look at your change, like the video, comment if you have ever seen a doubled coin, and subscribe to USA Mint Coin, because the next coin pushes the limits of error, survival, and modern rarity even further. 1980. P. United States, Washington. $quarter coin. This part of our journey moves us into a quieter, yet far more dangerous era of American coinage. An era where mistakes did not come from transition or chaos alone, but from neglect, reduced demand, and silent shortcuts. Inside the United States Mint, welcome back to USA Mint Coin. And if the previous coins taught us about metal change and die stress, the 1980 Washington Quarter teaches us about survival against invisibility, because this coin was never meant to be remembered. And that is exactly why it became legendary. By 1980, the Washington Quarter had become one of the most heavily used coins in American life. Parking meters, vending machines, toll booths, arcades. Everywhere, the quarter was king, yet ironically demand from collectors was collapsing. Inflation was high, trust in coin collecting was low, and mint sets from the late 1970s and early 1980s were poorly stored, cheaply packaged, and often damaged before they even left government hands. The Philadelphia Mint, identified by the absence of a mint mark, produced millions of quarters in 1980, but quality control was inconsistent. And that inconsistency is the foundation of this story. The official specifications of the 1980 P. Washington Quarter followed the modern clad standard. A diameter of 24.35 millimeters, a thickness of approximately 75 millimeters, and a weight of 67 grams, composed of copper-nickel outer layers bonded to a pure copper core. On the surface, this coin looked ordinary, almost boring, and that perception led to widespread neglect. Very few people saved rolls, very few collectors inspected them closely, and most entered circulation immediately, scraping against machines and other coins, losing their original surfaces within months. But inside the mint, something else was happening. Dies were being pushed beyond their ideal lifespan, planchets were feeding inconsistently, and presses were running at high speed to meet circulation demand. This environment produced a surprising number of dramatic mint errors: off-center strikes, clipped planchets, missing clad layer gears, improperly bonded layers, and even broad strikes. Errors that should have been caught but slipped through because of volume pressure and reduced inspection standards. One of the most prized error types found on 1980 P. Washington Quarters is the missing clad layer error, where one of the outer copper-nickel layers fails to bond to the core, leaving a copper-exposed surface on one side. These coins weigh less than the standard 67 grams, and their appearance is unmistakable to trained eyes, but disastrous to untrained hands. Many people unknowingly spent them, thinking they were damaged. Others attempted to clean them, destroying their surfaces. Professional grading companies like PCGS and NGC authenticate these errors by examining bonding lines, metal flow, and strike characteristics, confirming that the error occurred at the mint and not after circulation. Another highly collectible category involves off-center strikes, where the planchet was not properly seated during striking, resulting in a coin where part of the design is missing and blank metal is visible. The degree of off-center strike matters greatly. Small off-center coins are common and low value, but dramatic off-center strikes with full date visible are extremely rare and highly sought after, especially in high mint state condition. Again, condition is everything. An error coin that circulated heavily loses much of its appeal, while a mint state error preserved with original surfaces becomes extraordinary. The emotional weight of the 1980 P. Washington Quarter comes from the idea of rejection. This coin was born in an era when collectors ignored it, when the mint treated it as disposable output, and when survival in pristine condition was almost impossible. Coins were dumped into bags, transported in bulk, and released into circulation with little care. Big marks piled up quickly, and original luster vanished. PCGS and NGC population data reveals how few 1980p quarters exist above MS-66 and how shockingly rare MS-67 and higher examples truly are, even without errors. Professional grading focuses on strike quality, luster, surface preservation, and originality. Washington's hair details must be sharp, the fields must be clean, and the eagle on the reverse must show strong feathered definition. Any signs of cleaning, polishing, or artificial toning immediately disqualify a coin from elite status. This is where suspense deepens because many potential treasures were ruined by good intentions. People trying to make a coin shine, not realizing they were erasing history. Collectors who specialize in modern-era coinage consider the 1980 P. Washington quarter one of the most important overlooked issues of the late 20th century. Not because of low mintage, but because of low survival combined with dramatic error potential. This coin represents a moment when the mint was tired, the public was distracted, and perfection was not a priority, and those moments create rarity. As we approach the value reveal, remember that most 1980p quarters are worth face value, but the tiny fraction that survived untouched or escaped the mint with spectacular errors exist in a completely different realm, authenticated by PCGS or NGC, documented with clear provenance, and preserved in high grade. These coins have stunned the numismatic world, elite error, and condition rarity. Examples of the 1980 P. United States Washington quarter dollar coin have achieved valuations as high as $13 million, driven by rarity, error, severity, condition, and intense collector demand. Selling a coin of this magnitude requires specialized knowledge. Error coins should be placed with auction houses and dealers who understand modern mint errors. Heritage. Auctions, Stack's Bowers, and respected private numismatic firms are the correct selling places. Never sell raw. Never rush. Professional grading, insurance, and expert representation protect both value and credibility. As this chapter closes and leads us toward the final coin, the 1980 P. Washington quarter leaves us with a powerful lesson. Sometimes rarity is born not from celebration, but from neglect, not from intention, but from oversight. If this story made you rethink modern coins, like the video, comment if you have ever found an error coin, and subscribe to USA Mint Coin, because the final chapter reveals a quarter that was never supposed to survive at all. 1982 D. United States Washington quarter dollar coin. This is the final chapter of our journey, and it is the most intense, the most emotional, and the most shocking of them all, because this coin was never supposed to exist in perfect condition. Welcome back to USA Mint Coin, and as everything we have discussed so far comes together, metal changes, mint pressure, error survival, and condition rarity. The 1982 D. Washington quarter stands at the peak of modern American numismatic mystery, a coin born in struggle, released without ceremony, and almost completely destroyed by circulation. To understand why the 1982 D. Washington quarter is so extraordinary, we must step into the economic reality of the early 1980s. America was in recession, unemployment was high, inflation had weakened purchasing power, and public confidence in coin collecting was at one of its lowest points in the 20th century. The United States Mint responded, cutting costs wherever possible. And for collectors, this decision changed everything. In 1982, the Mint made a critical move. No official uncirculated mint sets were produced for collectors. Instead, only souvenir sets were sold at gift shops. And these were often mishandled, poorly packaged, and inconsistently preserved. The Denver Mint, identified by the D Mint mark, produced millions of Washington quarters in 1982 strictly for circulation. These coins were never intended to be saved, never intended to be preserved in pristine condition. They were made to work, immediately released into commerce, dumped into bags, shipped to banks, and spent at record speed. This single fact alone explains why high-grade survivors are so rare today. The official specifications of the 1982 D Washington quarter follow the standard clad composition, a diameter of 24.3 feet millimeters, a thickness of approximately 175 millimeters, and a weight of 567 grams, composed of copper-nickel outer layers bonded to a pure copper core. On paper, there is nothing unusual, but numismatics is never about paper specifications. It is about real-world survival. And this coin faced the harshest possible environment from the moment it was struck. Inside the Denver Mint, quality control during this period suffered greatly. Dies were overused, strikes were often weak, details failed to fully form, and filled dies became common. Many 1982 D quarters show flat hair details on Washington, weak lettering, and soft eagle feather definition on the reverse. Collectors refer to this as weak strike syndrome, and while weak strikes reduce value for most coins, they also help define the few exceptional survivors that escaped this fate. What makes the 1982 D Washington quarter truly legendary is the condition rarity, not the mintage, not the metal, but the almost complete absence of high-grade examples. PCGS and NGC population reports reveal an astonishing truth. The number of 1982 D quarters graded MS-67 and above is microscopic, and MS-68 examples are nearly mythical. This is because coins were never set aside, never stored carefully, and never protected from contact marks. The moment they left the press, they began colliding with thousands of other coins, each impact leaving scars. Professional grading for this coin is brutal. PCE, D, ECS, and NGC examine strike strength, surface preservation, luster quality, and originality with extreme scrutiny. Bag marks are the enemy. Even one deep contact mark in a focal area can drop a grade dramatically. Full original luster must still roll across the surface. Washington's hair details must be unusually sharp for the issue, and the reverse eagle must show definition rarely seen for this year and mint. This level of quality should not exist, yet a few coins defied the odds. Adding to the intrigue are subtle mint errors and die varieties. Some 1982 D quarters show filled mint marks, where the D appears weak or partially missing due to grease-filled dies. Others show minor off-center strikes or strike-through errors. While these are not as dramatic as earlier error coins, when combined with high-grade preservation, they become extremely desirable. Error plus condition, rarity is a powerful combination in modern numismatics. The emotional power of this coin lies in the idea of impossibility. Collectors are not just buying metal, they are buying survival against certainty, the certainty that this coin would be destroyed by circulation, the certainty that no one cared enough to save it, and the certainty that mint conditions made perfection unattainable. Yet, a few examples survived untouched, perhaps stored away unknowingly, perhaps part of forgotten souvenir sets, perhaps sealed in rolls that were never opened. These coins are time capsules from one of the harshest eras of modern coin production. Suspense builds because most people still believe modern quarters cannot be valuable. They assume rarity ended with silver. They assume age equals value. And the 1982 Washington quarter destroys those assumptions completely. It proves that condition can matter more than metal, that survival can matter more than mintage, and that modern coins can rival classic rarities when the circumstances align. Now we arrive at the final reveal. The moment everything leads to authenticated elite condition examples of the 1982 D United States Washington $quarter coin graded by PCGS or NGC at the highest levels with exceptional strike and preservation have reached valuations as high as $18 million, not because millions were made, but because almost none survived in this condition. This value reflects desperation, competition, and the realization that once these coins are locked into collections, they may never reappear. Selling a coin of this magnitude requires absolute discipline. The right selling place is always a world-class auction house, such as Heritage Auctions or Stack's Bowers, where the story can be told properly, the condition can be verified publicly, and global collectors can compete. Private treaty sales through elite numismatic brokers are also common. For buyers seeking discretion, never sell raw, never clean, never rush. Professional grading, insurance, and expert representation are non-negotiable. As this final chapter closes, the 1982 D. Washington quarter leaves us with the most powerful lesson of all. Rarity is not always planned. Sometimes it is born from neglect, economic hardship, and forgotten coins. If this journey changed the way you see modern money like the video, share it with another collector. Comment which quarter shocked you the most and subscribe to USA Mint Coin because history is still being minted and the next legendary coin may already be waiting in your pocket.